Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Peter Frank, and we will be talking about planning for Easter outreach events. We are just going live now, so I want to make sure we're all up and running. It looks like we've got our title slide up. We don't have any viewers yet, so we'll just wait a minute, make sure that. All right. Well, we've got people starting to join us, so we'll begin in just a moment. I've got 12:01 on my clock, so I think we are going to begin. So once again, if you're just joining us, welcome. This is Peter Frank, and this is Planning for Easter Outreach Events, a live broadcast led by Concordia Publishing House. My name, as I mentioned, is Peter Frank. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Concordia Publishing House, and I'll go on air in a second after I'm done sharing this slide deck. So joining me today are three people who are going to be talking about the events at their church. Get that slide up and running. First off, we have Jeremy Becker, Director of Youth and Family Ministry at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Weston, Florida. Hello, Jeremy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. Do you mind taking a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role there?
Sure. I work at St. Paul Lutheran as Director of Christian Education, and so specifically my role with Youth and Family Ministry allows for a large variety of ministry and opportunities to happen. And so I get to work with families, parents, kids, people of all ages here at St. Paul.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today to talk about your event. All right, next up we have Brenda Meyer, the Director of Children's Ministry at Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church in Plymouth, Minnesota. Brenda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Some background information on me and my event is I've been with Beautiful Savior for 20-some years. I've been in my role as full-time about 10 years now. And I have several years ago, we started an Easter event that began just as an outreach. It was a program that didn't have much other than like a carnival atmosphere. And then I was invited into the program and we turned it into something that's a little bit more of a Christian outreach. And that's what I'll be talking about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here. And last but not least, we have Lisa Clark, who is my coworker here at Concordia Publishing House. She's in our editorial department, but today you'll be focused on your role as a volunteer and pastor's wife at Ascension Lutheran Church here in St. Louis. How are you doing, Lisa?
Great, thanks.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at CPH, and also and how you serve at Ascension.
Sure. Well, at CPH, I am on the team that works with Sunday school and curriculum and day school and all kinds of things. So it's an exciting role here. And I also do a lot of writing. So do different types of writing for CPH. And it's been a lot of fun to do that. And as a volunteer at Ascension, specifically today talking about our Easter egg hunt and all that we do there. I'm one of many volunteers that works with that event and just happy to share some thoughts about it.
Great. Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and there you can see me. But I will not be the focus of the discussion today. So what we're going to do is we'll go around and spend about 5 minutes with each person talking about the event, giving a little bit of a history and an overview of what the event is. You are welcome to publicize the dates and the location, and that way anybody who's in your area who's watching is welcome to join you. But Jeremy, we're going to start with you as down there in Florida, you've got something, and it's an interesting event. I was really intrigued when I first heard about it because it was different than anything else I'd heard. So tell us a little bit about your resurrection run.
Well, sure. On Sunday morning, Easter morning, we do a 5K fun run walk at the park, which is right next door to our church. And we coordinate with the city to close the park and make it available for just our run. And it's been pretty exciting. This is going to be the 5th year that we've done that here at St. Paul. And we've grown to about 130 participants last year. We're hoping to push over 150 participants this year. For a community run, it's still on the very small side, but for our church community specifically is kind of a big opportunity and a fun event. It doubles up for us kind of as twofold. One, it's a fundraiser for our high schoolers who go out on mission trips, spoke tours, national youth gatherings. But then it also is an event for our community. And so while the majority of our participants are members of our church, we have received and already have this year registrations from people who don't worship here, who just like a Sunday morning 5K in the community and want to get out and enjoy the wonderful weather that we usually have in South Florida around Easter time. So that's been pretty exciting. And it all got started for me in 2007, actually, when I was serving as DCE at Concordia Lutheran Church in Kirkwood, Missouri. And our sunrise service was done in a cemetery a couple miles away from the church. And one of the pastors, Monty Hahn, decided he was going to walk back to the church after the sunrise service and invited people to join him. And that kind of turned into hey, let's organize this and make this something. And so that grew from 8 people who participated in 2007 to in 2012, there was 160 plus, and I believe they're still adding numbers to that event every year in the St. Louis area. And that was a pretty fun event. So when we moved down here to Florida, that was one of the things we said, let's try this in a different community and see how it works. And there's a large running club here in town that we haven't tapped yet, but that's something I look forward to pursuing in the future to see if that's something that will be a way to really make this even less about the fundraising part and more about the outreach part and getting out into the community.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And so I know the fundraising part has been successful. How has your congregation members kind of adapted to that, knowing that it's on Easter morning and it's an additional thing to do with everything else that's going on?
Sure.
Have they welcomed?
Yeah. So what we've done is the runners and participants are invited to come to our sunrise service, which starts at 7 a.m. And during the end of that service, we actually have kind of a sending for all the runners. So the runners leave the service and go do a little warm-up area and then do the run next door in the park. So that happens kind of in between the sunrise service at 7 and then the 8:30 is our first regular Easter morning worship time. So it kind of is sandwiched in between there. There's some people who weren't quite sure about it, and they weren't sure when people were showing up to the sunrise service with their shorts and running clothes. But it's become, I guess, acceptable for lack of a better word, and actually something that's you just anticipate it now, and it's kind of neat to see when you've got a service and more than half of them are dressed ready to run. That's kind of exciting. So they've taken to it. The congregation is excited about it. We have several sponsors from our congregation that have businesses or organizations, and they've paid money to have their logos on our T-shirts and signage. And so that's been a part of the fundraising aspect and also a help for their business. And several of them participate, obviously, too, which has been a lot of fun.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, we'll come back around to you in a few minutes as we got some questions about how you go about planning this. But for right now, let's move over to Brenda. And Brenda, tell us a little bit about your event.
As I alluded to a little bit earlier, is that we started out with a carnival-like event, and our event is how we spend the Saturday of Palm Sunday weekend. So it's kind of our start to Holy Week. We opened it up, and our outreach director had advertised it to the community, invited the community to come in. There were games and the inflatable bouncy houses, and we had face painters and crafts and all kinds of fun things for the kids to do. But our director of outreach at the time, he kept saying that there's something missing. So through brainstorming and trying to figure out what to do, I asked him, well, how about we include some sort of event that we could bring in to the community. And as you can see here on the screen now, is that we have the community come in and we show them a walk of the resurrection of Holy Week, basically. We have the people come in, we give them an Easter egg carton, and at each location or station that we have set up, they collect eggs, and they add it to their Easter egg or their carton. And inside the eggs, there are little tokens in there. So on this screen here that you see, this is where we have Mary, and she's anointing Jesus. And so we share with the kids what frankincense and myrrh would smell like. So we let them smell it, and we put a little bit on a cotton ball, and then they put it inside their egg. And at each station, then we keep adding eggs to their egg carton. And then it kind of gives them something to take home, and then they can reenact what they've learned through the walk. And each of the stations has something different for them to do. We have a donkey that they can go out and pet and have fun with that. We have they can reenact the palm waving and the walk into Jerusalem. We have another station where this is where Judas sells out Jesus, basically. And in here they have the opportunity to hear the story of Judas betraying Jesus, and then they can take the coins and make coin rubbings. We just have some plastic coins that they can take, and gives them something to do while they're listening to the story, and then they are able to take what they rubbed off on paper back with them. And then they have we wash their hands in simulation to Jesus washing the disciples' feet, and our volunteers talk about that to the kids and to the families that are there. And as we're going through each of the stations, it tells something specific about the Holy Week. Here the kids are enjoying and taking a peek at what's inside their eggs. At each of the stations, it's something different that they have inside their egg. And as they go through, parents are invited and kids are invited to participate as well. And some of the things that we have going on is that some families have come to expect to have this every year, and they start having some birthday parties that they bring with, and so they have a little group of kids that come in, and then they share the story of Jesus' death and resurrection through the kids that they invite to a birthday party. We've had some other churches come along as well, and they ask us, well, how do you do that? So we've shared some of our ideas to our local churches so that they have been able to share this experience in their churches as well. And after they get through to the end, we've got the tomb, the empty tomb. They can go inside. We've kind of recreated a little tomb that they can go into, and at the end of that, then they can move on and they can do crafts. And then we've got bouncy houses again. So we didn't get rid of all of the fun stuff that that we started out with, and then they have crafts and games. But it's an experience that the kids can all enjoy and learn from.
And how did that? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's right.
How did that transition from being more about just fun and games to really being Christ-focused go? Did your members accept it? Did the community accept it?
It was more that our members noticed it. We started out where it was kind of isolated from the bouncy houses, and a couple years ago, Pastor Benke joined us as our associate pastor. And he noticed that we were kind of tucked off to the side, and so he brought us down into our main floor, into the main part of our sanctuary, or our church. We go from one end of our church now all the way down, basically fill up our church with the resurrection story now. And they end up with the games, like I said. But it just kind of evolved. We had a lot of people commenting and saying that, this was one of their best experiences that they've had, that they enjoy coming. And we do have a lot of families that come every year that are from other churches from the community, and they bring other friends with them. We've heard comments. So one year we had somebody that wasn't a member of our church going through the event, and he was on his phone and he was calling up other people in his church saying, "You got to come over here, you got to come and see this."
Wow.
So it was kind of just an experience that people enjoyed doing, and they wanted to share it.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for going through those. And next up, Lisa, we're going to talk about your event at Ascension. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and with some background to it too?
Sure, sounds great. Well, my husband and I have been at Ascension for about 3.5 years. And one of the things that he and the congregation has been looking at are ways to engage our community. Community is really, of course, important everywhere, but part of the culture of where our church is, community is kind of a big deal. We are in an urban setting, but in a setting where it feels very much like a neighborhood. There are sidewalks. We are one of 4 churches at the corner of a park. So our neighborhood is definitely a place where people surrounding us walk past us, walk by us all the time. And we wanted to make sure that we were clearly not just a corner of the park to pass necessarily. We're a living congregation that is here for you and wants to engage with you. So we were looking at some different things that would bring people in. And one of the ideas was an Easter egg hunt. And we had been doing one in a congregation before this. And when my husband talked with a particular volunteer who was incredibly creative, said, "What do you think about an Easter egg hunt?" And she just took it and ran with it. And anybody who knows Marie can imagine all the creativity and energy that went into it. And the funny thing was, she was a fairly new member, as were we. She's been there longer than we have, but there were members that had been there for generations, for decades, who said, we used to do something like this. So that was kind of exciting too, to let people kind of share their memories, share their ideas, but also kind of get excited that we're sort of revitalizing something that we had done in the past, but also make it something new, make it our own. So some of the things that we do is, of course, make sure that the community itself knows that we're there, put out banners and different things. One of the other things that we did very intentionally is that our church is connected with our association school, quite literally. Our building is connected, although we have a different name because, again, it's an association school. So we wanted people to see that Word of Life is there and is also an active school. So we intentionally used the space both outside and inside. We intentionally use the school grounds so that kids can become familiar with the facility, so that parents say, "Oh yeah, I've been in that building before," so they can see the things that are on our walls, the Christian signage that's everywhere, the art and all of that. So it was a really neat way to engage both church and school and community to see who we were. And there are a lot of activities to the Easter egg hunt. We wanted to make sure it was something that, as kids with Easter egg hunts, they can last just a matter of minutes. So we wanted them to be able to stay for a few hours as time allowed. So we start off with, we buy a different arch book each year, and we have the pastor get up in front and read it, at least in part, to the students. So we know, to the kids, so we know that at the very least, right at the very beginning, before they run off and do their things, that they've heard the gospel message of Jesus' death and resurrection for the forgiveness of our sins. So then after that, we say, "And we have a gift for you," and we hand out the book. So again, they get to take that word, that message home with them. So that's been an exciting part of it. But then, of course, there's more. So we have games. We have some things for older kids. We have crafts for all ages. We have bounce houses too and things. And of course, the Easter egg hunt, face painting, different things, just to try to get people involved. There's also been an intentional effort, and I really appreciate this about the leadership of this particular event, to make sure that people know that, hey, we're not just here one day a year. So we have flyers of upcoming worship services, upcoming activities. We have a table dedicated to our VBS, so they can catch their eye and they can get flyers there. We have a women's tea party that happens after Easter, so we make sure that flyers are out there. We give away tea bags to the moms and make sure that they know that that event's there as well. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great way to engage different volunteers, some who do everything, but others who don't always necessarily volunteer all the time, or maybe they just didn't quite find the thing that they were interested in helping with. And so it's been a great way to engage a lot of different people. Some have even asked their, friends or relatives who don't necessarily have a church home, hey, can you help me? I need somebody to hand out X during the event. So we even have some volunteers kind of unknowingly exposed to our church and to our school. So it's been a lot of fun. We make sure that all of our school students get a flyer. We make sure that our neighborhood knows about it, and that our family or our church members are able to invite their family, their friends to something that seems maybe a little less threatening than just something that's very structured, but something that's just kind of come on over and enjoy a morning with us.
Thank you very much for going into that. And I have insider knowledge having attended that event, and it's just fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned the volunteers, because I think that's such a key part of the interactions. I know we've seen it as we've attended. Do you prep them on how to engage with the visitors, or what do you do to help them become so friendly in that environment, or is it just natural to them?
Sure. Well, some of it happens naturally in the sense that it's contagious. The volunteer leadership that we've had has just been naturally excited, and that carries. But then there's some coaching as well. And that's one of the things that's kind of a blessing about event this big, is you cannot do it on your own. So you need to ask people to do a variety of different things. And so some people who kind of want to be behind the scenes, they help decorate or they help with snacks. But some others who want to do a little bit more engagement, then, for example, registration. There are a few veterans, if you will, working with some of the newer volunteers to kind of demonstrate, okay, let's take this clipboard and go out and with a smile and engage the different people who are waiting in line, for example. And we're constantly refining the process. We do certain things all the time. It's always 2 weeks before Easter, so hopefully people can start counting on that. So April Fool's this year. But there are other things that we're constantly going back and saying, okay, what can we do better? Who can we bring on this time to help train for the future? So it's definitely a concerted effort in that regard.
Excellent. Well, our theme for today is planning Easter outreach events. And I know that as we are coming up just short of a month before Easter, it's probably a bit too late for most of those who are watching to start an Easter event of this grand scale. But tell us a little bit about that process and how early you start planning. Jeremy, we'll start with you.
Sure. We obviously get it on our church calendar in the fall so that everybody knows what's going on. It also helps that we know when Easter is going to be every year. So once that's set and everybody knows that, hey, we're going to be doing a 5K again on Easter morning, then we can start talking about it. But the real planning starts to ramp up right after Christmas, beginning of January, after everybody's coming back from Christmas breaks or whatever they're doing with their own families. And so once we all kind of get back in the swing of things in January, we start publicizing it, sharing it with the people who participated in the past, sharing it with the community and getting it out into newspapers and brochures and things like that, putting it out in other runs that are done in the area. So when they get a bag of all the goodie bag stuff, when a runner picks up all their stuff for another event, sometimes we've been able to get our postcards and flyers into those bags so people can say, oh, here's the next one. And then our own planning happens too, in terms of getting T-shirts designed, getting the sponsorships and everything. So that starts in January. We're nailing down right now, a month out. We have to get our final numbers into our T-shirt company in about a week or two. They have a 2 week. We give them a 2 week turnaround to get us that stuff back. So that happens. We will print bibs with names on them and barcode scanners so that we can scan official times as they come across the finish line. That all has to get to the printer. And so that's all happening kind of right now, a month out. That's this week's kind of crunch time for some of that information, sponsorship logos and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how the planning goes. Starts January, really intense at the beginning, and then kind of just gathering information up until about a month before, which is right now. And so we continue the registration process, continue the design for shirts and everything else that we'll be handing out, and that's happening kind of this week, next week, and then the event itself. That's
quite a amount of work to do in just a short time, starting January. Wow. Brenda, how about you? What time do you start planning your event?
We're similar to what Jeremy does. We wait until after Christmas, one season at a time, basically. And we start advertising, looking for volunteers. Pastor Joe this year has been in charge of recruiting the volunteers, and he does the games and the craft area where he recruits volunteers to take charge of those things. And then I do our Easter Journey Walk. So I recruit through our Sunday school staff that are familiar with the stories. We do have scripts that they follow, so they have kind of little cheater notes that they can use to kind of highlight certain areas of the area that they're assigned to. But we do open it up to our congregation to be volunteers. So our pastors will make that request during church services that we're looking for volunteers. So it's a lot of word of mouth and through newsletters, and we do recruit through our website as well, so that they all know that's coming, and then they can start signing up for it. And once they do sign up and they experience it, they know what it's about, and they come back year after year then to help out because they enjoy it as well, being able to share their little piece of the Holy Week with those that are coming in.
That's great. Those regular volunteers help make that process go a little bit easier, I'm sure. And Lisa, how about you? When do you guys start?
Yeah, in some ways, there's a little bit different dynamic at Ascension because currently the only called church worker on staff is the pastor. So we definitely rely heavily on volunteer leadership. And for that reason, of course, it often depends on the particular volunteers and how they're going to lead. And again, really blessed with, especially starting up again, just within the past 3 or 4 years, some really strong volunteer leadership. Marie, again, who started off, not only did she research, she would, for example, go to other places and get ideas and everything, but she also took a huge binder and took pictures of everything she did and sent checklists to everyone. So it was a huge blessing because now, as for example, she's switching her role slightly this particular year, and she's recruiting the help of a volunteer named Jonathan. They're working together, and she's able to go through a lot of her records, different things that she's done. But then there's also volunteers who have been helping, so it's not necessarily new. So, for example, right after this Easter, this egg hunt, we're going to be probably getting some emails and okay, let's think about what worked, at least get those things down. She sent out surveys to the volunteers in the years past. What things did you really like? Do you have some ideas for the future? And then right after those things are kind of fresh in our minds and we sort of let go of those kinds of planning, then there is a little bit of respite. Although there are definitely the decorators who take advantage of the after Easter sales and things. So I would say right after the event, there's about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks of post-event planning. And then things settle down for a while, of course. And then probably I would say, well, really throughout the year, every once in a while, I'll get an email. I saw this and I had an idea. But in addition to that, really after Christmas, more as we start realizing, Lent's coming in a couple weeks. That's when we start making sure that we have all the spaces filled. We put up a poster and just have volunteers sign up. As far as subcommittees, I guess you can call them, we ask specific volunteers to head those up, but then we invite the congregation to find ways that they can help, whether it be donating things, because this is a completely free event, or whether donating their time or what have you. So there are certain prep days where people might come and prep baskets ahead of time, for example. That those are different things. Oh, I can't be at the Easter egg hunt, but I can help decorate. I can help bring a basket. Those kinds of things can be helpful as well. So yeah, it's in some ways it's year round, but certainly more intense as things build up throughout the Lenten season.
Fantastic. Well, I've got one last question for all three of you, and that would be if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who is planning an outreach event like this around Easter for the first time, as they start to think about this year as they move into next year and think about what they could be doing in their community, what would that piece of advice be? And Jeremy, we'll start with you and kind of wrap around to the end. Whoops, actually, I think we got you muted still.
There we go. I think for me, in terms of how it would play out, is we still ask the question ourselves: is this a fundraiser or an outreach event? And we've tried to walk the line of it being both. And I think it's worked okay. But if you really want to do this as an outreach event and really hit your community, then I would put a lot of your energy into that. We've been putting our energy, I think, on the front end of this to make sure that we have the sponsorships and the people that provide the money to make sure we have T-shirts and things like that. And I think we've gotten to the point now where that is the case. And so we can really start to dump our energy into getting this out there for people to know that this is something that's happening, to be here in our community, for the community to join our community at church in a way that's different than the normal way to join a church community. And so if you want to jump into that as an outreach focus, start with that. Don't go between fundraiser outreach, or else I think you'll be a lot slower to get to that outreach portion, which is kind of what we've experienced.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that. Brenda, same question for you. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who's starting off?
I would say making sure that the congregation is on board. Word of mouth is what has helped a lot with spreading the word as far as what we have going on, being able to take that out into the community to invite family members, neighbors, and so having the congregation being that piece that invites those to come to the event is a big piece for us to be able to have them. And then also having the congregation being part of it so that they can share their experience and what they see and the excitement that the kids and the families have that come. That's another piece that helps a lot. If they can see that and then go out and tell others about it, it's a positive effect as far as getting people to come in and experience it.
That's fantastic. And what a time to be excited right at Easter as we celebrate the resurrection.
Yes.
All right, Lisa, same question for you. Bring us home.
It is not all on your shoulders, and don't let it be. So if you know of a church, wherever they are in the nation, and you know they're doing something kind of similar, get ideas from them. Usually they're very happy to share some thoughts. But then also, as you're heading this up, whether you be somebody on staff or whether you are a volunteer, make sure you delegate a lot of the work. It is just too much, especially during the time of Lent, to be overwhelmed with everything that's going on. So try to share it. I think that definitely makes it a more joyful time if you are able to look to others as your support, and to also be able to use their gifts as well.
That's great. Well, thank you to all three of you for being here. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules, especially, like I said, during this Lenten season. Thank you for sharing your insight and God's blessings to you as you continue to plan your outreach events. For those of you who attended today, I appreciate you being here. We have recorded this. It will be available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with somebody else at your congregation. And we're always looking for new ideas on how to share resources for people and to help them in their ministry. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But with that, we're going to finish up for today. And thank you once again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.